In the early 1990s, Donald Trump was drowning in billions of dollars of debt he could not pay back. His business empire had stalled, collapsing under the weight of hyper-leveraged loans. Look at the sheer scale of the Taj Mahal in Atlantic City. Along with his other massive casinos, his hotels, and even a branded airline, these properties were bleeding cash and falling into bankruptcy. Yet the public perception of the time remained unshakable. To the average American, he remained the undisputed symbol of financial success. How does a man bankrupt his way to the top of the cultural hierarchy? His ascent relies on the relentless execution of a specific psychological method, one that proves controlling a narrative is far more effective than actually succeeding in reality. Before the global fame, he was a young, wealthy rent collector working in the shadow of his father's empire. He spent his days in generic apartments, dealing with standard administrative friction and tenant complaints. His father, Fred Trump, built power through structural leverage and government housing subsidies. It was a quiet, stable business, but Donald found this anonymous scale infuriating. He wanted the center of the frame. The shift began when he met Roy Cohn, a ruthless, mob-connected lawyer who specialized in the dark art of political influence. Cohn operated on a brutal philosophy. He viewed truth as a human fiction and morality as a hindrance. To him, the only metric of human value was winning at any cost. Cohn saw the young man's deep fear of appearing weak and handed him the playbook, a 3-step method to manufacture power out of thin air. The first rule is simple: attack, attack, attack. In 1973, the Department of Justice hit the Trump Organization with a civil rights lawsuit, alleging they refused to rent to black tenants. Traditional lawyers suggested settling the case quietly to minimize the damage. Cohn instructed him to do the opposite: launch a massive, aggressive counter-lawsuit against the government itself. This taught him that pure, unrelenting aggression freezes the system. It forces massive institutions onto the defensive and shifts the power dynamic. Under this method, admitting a mistake is never read as honesty. It is a fatal weakness that invites your own destruction. Rule 2. Admit nothing, deny everything. He scaled this up in the late 1970s, starting with the Grand Hyatt. By using political connections, he secured a staggering $160 million tax break from a city that was virtually bankrupt. To keep expanding, he needed more leverage. He created a fake alter ego named John Barron and called reporters to lie about his net worth, successfully manipulating his way onto the Forbes 400 list. Banks used that magazine list as proof of solvency, granting him hundreds of millions of dollars in loans based entirely on a manufactured illusion. Eventually, the math caught up with him. His sprawling empire, particularly the massive casinos in Atlantic City, began to collapse under the weight of his unpayable debt. Faced with ruin, he bundled his failing private casinos into a public shell company, ticker DJT. Retail investors, believing the hype, bought shares and absorbed the red, toxic debt, while Trump extracted millions in payouts. The business itself didn't need to be viable. He just needed to execute the method well enough to let the public market take the fatal blow while he walked away with the cash. The final rule is to claim victory and never admit defeat. By the early 2000s, his real estate empire was a shell, but his public narrative had to survive. He launched The Apprentice, a reality television show built entirely around the absolute authority of the boss. In a saturated attention economy, actual, verifiable success matters far less than the televised appearance of it. Each week, he sat in a boardroom, firing contestants and demanding loyalty, projecting total dominance without carrying real-world financial risk. The Apprentice literally manifested power into existence, cementing a version of Trump in the minds of millions that real-world bankruptcy courts could no longer touch. Behind the scenes, the method was exacting a toll. As Roy Cohn fell terminally ill and lost his political influence, his star pupil completely abandoned him. The playbook has no concept of loyalty. In this binary system of killers and victims, a dying mentor is simply a weakness that must be discarded to maintain the illusion of absolute strength. There is a sharp historical irony buried in the Trump lineage, one that stands in direct opposition to the rhetoric he eventually used to command the nation. His grandfather, Friedrich, built the family's first wealth during the gold rush. He opened restaurants and hotels for miners in the Klondike, aggressively exploiting the lawless gray areas of the frontier to claim his stake. This dynasty, built by immigrants who squeezed every drop of opportunity from a wide-open frontier, now works to dismantle the very ladders that made its own existence possible. Thinking of Donald Trump as a singular villain or a unique business genius is a mistake. He is simply the inevitable product of an American system that actively rewards shameless spectacle over verifiable reality. Removing the man does not remove the threat, because the underlying machinery of the attention economy remains fully intact. As long as our culture continues to reward this three-step playbook of attack, denial, and fabricated victory, the next apprentice is already in training.